The VHS player was still running when police found the empty house on Elm Street. The tape had reached its end and was rewinding with that distinctive mechanical whir that defined home entertainment in 1999. On the coffee table sat 4 bowls of popcorn, barely touched, and 4 glasses of soda still fizzing. The movie The Matrix was paused on the TV screen, frozen on Neo's confused face as he stared at the red pill in Morpheus's palm. But the Thompson family was gone. It was supposed to be a perfect Friday night in the small town of Cedar Falls, Iowa. Tom Thompson, a 45-year-old insurance adjuster, had promised his wife Sarah and their 2 teenage children a family movie night to celebrate the end of the school year. 16-year-old Jessica had just finished her sophomore year with straight A's, while 14-year-old Michael had made the varsity soccer team despite being a freshman. The Thompsons were the epitome of American suburban normalcy. Tom coached Little League on weekends, Sarah taught 4th grade at Cedar Falls Elementary, and their colonial-style house on Elm Street was the kind of place where neighbors borrowed sugar and children rode bikes safely after dark. In a town of 8,500 people, everyone knew everyone, and families like the Thompsons were the backbone of the community. That's what made their disappearance so unsettling. The first sign something was wrong came at 11:30 p.m. when Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor next door, called the police about a terrible screaming she'd heard from the Thompson house around 9 p.m. It wasn't normal screaming, she told Officer David Martinez when he arrived to check on the complaint. It was unnatural, like something you'd hear in a horror movie. But then it just stopped suddenly, and the house has been completely quiet ever since. Officer Martinez knocked on the front door of 1247 Elm Street. No answer. He could see lights on inside and noticed the blue glow of a television through the living room window. After several attempts to get a response, he walked around the house, checking windows and the back door. That's when he noticed something odd. The back door was wide open, swinging gently in the evening breeze. "Cedar Falls Police," Martinez called out as he entered through the unlocked door. "Is anyone home?" The house felt wrong immediately, not because of anything obviously disturbing, but because of how normal everything looked. Dinner dishes were washed and put away, mail was sorted on the kitchen counter, a load of laundry sat folded in a basket by the stairs, waiting to be taken upstairs. It was the living room that stopped Officer Martinez cold. 4 spots on the sectional sofa showed clear indentations where people had been sitting. The coffee table was set for a family movie night. Popcorn in individual bowls, drinks poured, candy scattered around. The VHS player's display showed 9:47 p.m., the exact time the movie had been paused. But most unsettling was what Martinez found on the entertainment center, a camcorder sitting on its tripod, pointed directly at the sofa, with its red recording light still blinking. The family had been filming their movie night. Martinez immediately called for backup and contacted Detective Rebecca Chen, who had just finished her shift but was still the most experienced investigator in the Cedar Falls Police Department. Chen arrived at the scene 20 minutes later, bringing with her the kind of methodical approach that had solved every major case in the county for the past 8 years. "What do we know?" Chen asked Martinez as she snapped on latex gloves. "Neighbor heard screaming around 9 p.m. Family appears to have vanished during a movie night. The camcorder was recording, but I haven't touched it yet." Chen surveyed the scene with the careful eye of someone who had learned to notice details others missed. The house showed no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken items, no evidence of forced entry. The family had simply disappeared. "Any signs of where they went?" Chen asked. "That's the thing," Martinez replied. "All their cars are in the garage. Purses and wallets are upstairs in the master bedroom. House keys are on the kitchen counter. If they left with nothing." Chen approached the camcorder carefully. It was a Sony Handycam, typical of the era, and it had been recording for over 2 hours, according to the timestamp. She pressed the stop button and rewound the tape slightly, then pressed play. What she saw on the camera's small LCD screen made her pause. The footage showed the Thompson family settling in for their movie night. Tom was adjusting the volume on the TV while Sarah distributed snacks. Jessica was texting on her Nokia phone, and Michael was sorting through a stack of VHS tapes, apparently debating what to watch after The Matrix. Everything looked completely normal, a typical American family enjoying a Friday evening together. Chen fast-forwarded through the recording, watching the family interact, joke, and settle in to watch the movie. The timestamp showed 9:45 p.m. when something changed. All 4 family members suddenly looked toward the camera with expressions of confusion. Then fear. Jessica's mouth opened as if she was screaming, but there was no audio on the camcorder. It was an older model that only recorded video. At exactly 9:47 p.m., all 4 family members stood up simultaneously, as if responding to some command or signal. They walked toward the camera in single file, their movements stiff and unnatural. Tom reached the camcorder first and appeared to say something directly into the lens before the recording went dark. "Martinez," Chen called, "I need you to see this." They watched the footage together 3 times. Each viewing made it more disturbing. The family's movements in those final moments were too coordinated, too synchronized to be natural human behavior. "What do you think he said at the end?" Martinez asked. "We'll need to get this to someone who can read lips," Chen replied. "But first, we need to process this scene properly and start looking for these people." The Cedar Falls Police Department had never handled a missing persons case involving an entire family. Chief Robert Wagner called in the Iowa State Police and contacted the FBI field office in Des Moines. By Saturday morning, 1247 Elm Street was swarming with investigators, forensic specialists, and search teams. The FBI sent Special Agent Linda Morrison, a specialist in unusual disappearances who had worked similar cases across the Midwest. Morrison arrived Saturday afternoon and immediately established a command post in the Thompsons' garage. "Cases like this typically fall into 3 categories," Morrison explained to the assembled investigators. "Family annihilation with body disposal, voluntary disappearance, or something more unusual that we don't yet understand." "What makes you rule out foul play by an outsider?" Chen asked. "Several factors," Morrison replied, consulting her notes. "No signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, no defensive wounds or blood evidence, and most importantly, the synchronized behavior caught on the camcorder suggests the family was responding to something they all perceived simultaneously." The search efforts were extensive. Volunteers from Cedar Falls and surrounding communities combed through cornfields, wooded areas, and abandoned buildings within a 20-mile radius. The Thompsons' financial records were scrutinized for any indication of planned disappearance. Their phones, computers, and personal belongings were examined for clues about their state of mind or any threats they might have been facing. Everything came back normal. Too normal. Tom Thompson's insurance office confirmed he had been at work until 5:30 p.m. on Friday, handling routine claims and showing no signs of distress. Sarah had finished her last day of school that week and had been excited about summer vacation. Jessica and Michael had made plans with friends for the weekend, plans they had seemed genuinely interested in keeping. This wasn't a planned disappearance, Detective Chen concluded after reviewing all the evidence. Whatever happened to this family, they weren't expecting it. The camcorder footage became the focus of intense analysis. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit studied the family's movements frame by frame, trying to understand what had caused their sudden change in behavior. A lip-reading expert was brought in to interpret Tom Thompson's final words to the camera. The lip-reader's conclusion was disturbing. "They're here, tell them we tried to run." But who was they? And what did Tom mean by "tried to run"? Dr. Amanda Foster, a psychologist specializing in mass hysteria and shared delusions, was consulted about the family's synchronized behavior. Her analysis raised more questions than answers. The coordination of their movements suggests they were all responding to the same stimulus, Dr. Foster explained. But for four people to react identically and simultaneously to anything would be extremely unusual unless they were under some form of external control. External control? Agent Morrison asked. Drugs, hypnosis, or some form of coercion that we can't see on the recording. But there's no evidence of any of those factors in the blood tests we ran on samples from their drinking glasses. The investigation expanded to include interviews with everyone who had contact with the Thompson family in the days leading up to their disappearance. Teachers, co-workers, neighbors, friends, and extended family members were questioned extensively. A pattern began to emerge that had initially been overlooked. Several people mentioned that the Thompsons had seemed distracted or anxious in the weeks before they vanished. Tom had asked strange questions at work about home security systems. Sarah had inquired with colleagues about feeling like you're being watched. Jessica had told friends she was having nightmares about people in the house. Michael had started sleeping with his bedroom door locked. They were scared of something, Chen realized, but they never reported it to police or sought help from anyone. Further investigation revealed that the Thompson family had recently installed a new security system, upgraded their door locks, and begun closing their curtains during the day, all behaviors suggesting they felt threatened. But threatened by whom? The breakthrough came when investigators discovered a series of hang-up calls to the Thompson home phone in the weeks before the disappearance. The calls came from different numbers, but phone company records showed they all traced back to prepaid cell phones purchased with cash, untraceable. Someone was systematically harassing this family, Agent Morrison concluded. The question is whether that harassment escalated to abduction or something worse. The search for the Thompsons continued through the summer of 1999. Their photos appeared on milk cartons and missing persons websites. America's Most Wanted featured their case in a segment that generated hundreds of tips, none of which led to credible sightings. As months passed with no new leads, the investigation began to wind down. The Thompson house remained exactly as it had been found, preserved as a potential crime scene, but the daily search efforts ceased. The case became one of Iowa's most famous unsolved mysteries. Theories abounded in the true crime community and on early internet forums. Some suggested the family had been victims of a satanic cult. Others believed they had witnessed something they shouldn't have and been eliminated by shadowy government agencies. The most outlandish theories involved alien abduction or supernatural forces. Detective Chen never stopped working the case, even after she was promoted to sergeant and then lieutenant. She kept the case files in her office and regularly reviewed them, looking for patterns or clues that might have been missed. 4 people don't just vanish into thin air, she would tell anyone who asked about the case. Somewhere there's evidence of what happened to them. We just haven't found it yet. The Thompson house stood empty for 2 years before Tom's brother, James Thompson, inherited the property. James couldn't bring himself to live in the house where his brother's family had vanished, but he also couldn't bring himself to sell it. Instead, he rented it to a series of tenants, none of whom stayed longer than a few months. Tenants complained of strange noises, unexplained cold spots, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Most unsettling, several tenants reported that the old television in the living room would sometimes turn on by itself, always tuned to static. "That house is haunted," declared Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor who had first reported the screaming. "Those poor people are trapped there somehow, trying to tell us what happened." The Cedar Falls community never fully recovered from the Thompson disappearance. Parents became more protective of their children. People installed better security systems and were quicker to call police about suspicious activity. The case became a cautionary tale about how quickly safety could be shattered, even in small-town America. Local folklore grew around 1247 Elm Street. Teenagers dared each other to spend time near the house after dark. Some claimed to see figures moving past the windows. Others reported hearing the sound of a television playing late at night, even when the house was supposedly empty. James Thompson eventually stopped renting the property in 2005 after the third tenant in 6 months broke their lease, claiming the house was actively haunted. The building was winterized and left vacant, becoming an unwelcome reminder of an unsolved tragedy. Years passed. Detective Chen retired in 2010, having never solved the case that had defined her career. The original investigators moved on to other jobs or retired. The FBI closed the case file, though it remained technically open. But 1247 Elm Street remembered. In 2015, James Thompson died of a heart attack, and the property passed to his daughter, Rebecca Thompson Walsh, who lived in California and had never seen the house. She hired a local property management company to maintain the building and began considering whether to sell it or demolish it. The property manager, Mike Stevens, was a practical man who didn't believe in ghosts or supernatural nonsense. He visited the house monthly to check for maintenance issues and had never experienced anything unusual until December 2023. Stevens was conducting his routine inspection when he noticed that the old television in the living room was on, displaying static. He had turned off the power to the house months earlier to save on electricity costs, so the TV shouldn't have been functional. When he flipped the main breaker to restore power to investigate, the TV immediately switched from static to a clear image, security camera footage of the Thompson family's living room from the night they disappeared. But this wasn't footage Stevens had ever seen before. This wasn't from the camcorder the police had found. This was from a different angle, showing details that had never been part of the official investigation. And most disturbing of all, this footage showed what had happened after the camcorder stopped recording. Stevens called the Cedar Falls Police Department, who contacted the current detective handling cold cases, Detective Maria Santos. Santos had been a rookie patrol officer in 1999 and remembered the Thompson case well, though she had never been directly involved in the investigation. When Santos arrived at 1247 Elm Street and saw what was playing on the television, she immediately understood that the Thompson family's 25-year-old mystery was about to be solved. The recording showed something that would change everything investigators thought they knew about that Friday night in 1999. But it also revealed a truth more disturbing than anyone had imagined. A truth that explained not just what had happened to the Thompson family, but why their house had never felt empty in all the years since their disappearance. The dead, it seemed, had been trying to tell their story for 25 years. They had finally found a way to make someone listen. Detective Maria Santos had seen a lot of unexplainable things during her 15 years with the Cedar Falls Police Department, but nothing had prepared her for what was playing on the television at 1247 Elm Street that cold December evening in 2023. The footage was crystal clear, despite being 24 years old. It showed the Thompson family's living room from an angle that no one had ever seen before, a high corner perspective that seemed to capture the entire room simultaneously. This wasn't from the handheld camcorder that had been found recording on the entertainment center. This was from a fixed security camera that, according to all official records, had never existed. "Mike, you said you found it playing like this when you arrived?" Santos asked the property manager, who was standing nervously by the front door. "I swear to you, detective, the power was off to this house, has been for months. But when I walked in for my inspection, that TV was on, showing exactly what you're seeing now." Santos approached the television carefully, as if it might suddenly go dark if she moved too quickly. The image quality was remarkable for 1999 technology, better than most security systems even today. But more unsettling was the timestamp in the corner, December 15th, 1999, 9:48 p.m., 1 minute after the original camcorder recording had ended. "Have you touched anything? Changed any settings?" Santos asked. "Nothing. I was afraid to touch anything after I saw what was playing. That's when I called you guys." The footage showed the Thompson family living room exactly as it had been found that night. But from this new angle, Santos could see details that had been missed in the original investigation. Most importantly, she could see what happened after the camcorder stopped recording. On screen, the 4 Thompson family members stood frozen in a line near the entertainment center, their backs to this mysterious camera. Their posture was rigid, unnatural, as if they were waiting for something. The timestamp continued, 9:49, 9:50, 9:51. At exactly 9:52 p.m., shadows began moving across the walls of the living room, though nothing in the room seemed to be casting them. The shadows moved independently, flowing like liquid darkness across the surfaces. "Jesus," Mike whispered. "What is that?" Santos didn't answer. She was transfixed by what she was seeing. The shadows seemed to have intelligence, purpose. They moved toward the Thompson family with deliberate intent. At 9:53 p.m., the family members began to turn around, but their movements were wrong. They turned too slowly, too uniformly, like mannequins being rotated by an unseen hand. When they completed their turn, Santos gasped. Their faces were blank, not unconscious or drugged. Blank. No expression, no emotion, no sign of awareness. Their eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. The shadows reached them at 9:54 p.m. What happened next defied every rational explanation Santos could imagine. The shadows seemed to merge with the family members, flowing into them like liquid being absorbed by fabric. As this happened, the family's expressions changed. Fear returned to their faces, but it was a different kind of fear than what had been captured on the camcorder. This was terror beyond human comprehension. The family members began to move again, but their movements were jerky, puppet-like, as if something else was controlling their bodies. They walked toward the back door, the same door that had been found open when police arrived. At 9:56 p.m., all 4 Thompsons disappeared from the camera's view, heading toward the back of the house. The living room remained empty for several minutes, the only movement being the continued writhing of shadows on the walls. Then, at 10:03 p.m., the shadows began to fade, retreating to the corners of the room like water draining from a sink. By 10:05 p.m., the living room looked completely normal again. The timestamp continued running until 10:47 p.m., when the recording suddenly cut to static. Santos rewound the footage and watched it again, taking detailed notes. Each viewing revealed new details that made the situation more unsettling. The shadows appeared to respond to some kind of intelligence. The family's movements, while unnatural, showed signs of resistance, as if their consciousness was still present, but no longer in control of their bodies. "Mike, I need you to step outside while I call this in," Santos said. "And I need you to not talk to anyone about what we've seen here until I give you the all clear." "You think I'm crazy enough to tell people I saw ghosts on TV?" Mike replied, already heading for the door. "I'm not even sure I believe it myself." After Mike left, Santos made several phone calls, first to her captain, then to the FBI field office in Des Moines, and finally to Dr. Amanda Foster, the psychologist who had consulted on the original case and was now a professor at the University of Iowa. "Dr. Foster, this is Detective Santos with Cedar Falls PD. We have a development in the Thompson case from 1999. "The Thompson case?" Dr. Foster sounded surprised. "I haven't thought about that in years. What kind of development?" "The kind that's going to sound impossible when I describe it. Can you come to Cedar Falls tonight?" "Tonight?" "Detective, it's already 8 p.m. and I'm in Iowa City. What's so urgent about a 24-year-old cold case?" because we found new footage of the night the family disappeared. Footage that shows what happened after they vanished from the camcorder recording. There was a long pause on the phone. That's impossible. We reviewed every piece of technology in that house. There was no other recording device. Dr. Foster, I'm looking at it right now. High-quality security camera footage from an angle that shows the entire living room. And what it shows, you need to see this in person. Dr. Foster agreed to drive to Cedar Falls immediately. While Santos waited for her arrival, she continued studying the footage, pausing at key moments and taking photographs of the screen with her phone. The more she analyzed the recording, the more questions arose. The shadows moved in patterns that seemed almost ritualistic. The family's responses suggested they were aware of what was happening, but powerless to resist. Most disturbing, there were moments when the shadows seemed to communicate with each other, gathering in corners as if conferring before taking action. Captain Rodriguez arrived at 10:30 p.m., followed by Agent Morrison, the same FBI agent who had worked the original case, now nearing retirement but still sharp and dedicated to solving the mystery that had haunted her career. "Maria, please tell me you have something concrete this time," Captain Rodriguez said as he entered the house. "The FBI is asking some hard questions about why we're reopening a case that's been cold for 2 decades. Captain, Agent Morrison, you need to see this footage, but I'm warning you, what you're about to see challenges everything we understand about this case." Santos played the recording from the beginning, pointing out key details and explaining what she had observed during her analysis. Both Captain Rodriguez and Agent Morrison watched in stunned silence. "This has to be fake," Rodriguez said when the footage ended. "Some kind of digital manipulation or special effects." "Captain, this is 1999 technology. Digital manipulation at this level wasn't possible with consumer equipment. And where would this footage have come from? Every electronic device in the house was accounted for in the original investigation." Agent Morrison had been taking notes throughout the viewing. "Detective Santos, you said the TV was playing this when the property manager arrived." "That's correct. The power to the house had been disconnected for months, but the TV was on and displaying this footage. That's physically impossible, unless the TV has an internal power source, which a 1999 television would not have." Dr. Foster arrived at 11:15 p.m., bringing with her a graduate student specializing in digital forensics and a portable computer loaded with analysis software. She was clearly skeptical about what Santos had described over the phone. "Doctor, before we begin, I want to prepare you for what you're about to see. This footage appears to show paranormal activity. I know how that sounds coming from a police detective, but I need you to analyze what we're seeing with an open mind. Detective, in my 30 years of psychological practice, I've never encountered genuine paranormal phenomena. There's always a rational explanation, even for the most unusual cases." Santos played the footage again, this time with Dr. Foster and her student taking detailed notes and asking the student to run preliminary analysis on the image quality and potential digital artifacts. By the time the recording ended, Dr. Foster's skepticism had been replaced by fascination and concern. "The family's movements are consistent with a dissociative state," she said, consulting her notes. "But for all 4 family members to enter the same dissociative condition simultaneously would be unprecedented in psychological literature." "What about the shadows?" Agent Morrison asked. "Can psychology explain visual hallucinations that appear on recorded footage?" "No," Dr. Foster admitted. "If this footage is authentic, and I emphasize if, then we're looking at phenomena that can't be explained by current psychological or medical understanding." The graduate student Jake Martinez had been running analysis on screenshots of the footage using his laptop. "Dr. Foster, I'm not finding any evidence of digital manipulation. The compression artifacts, color depth, and resolution are all consistent with 1999 security camera technology. But that's impossible, Agent Morrison pointed out. We inventoried every electronic device in this house. There was no security system, no hidden cameras, nothing that could have recorded this footage. Unless, Dr. Foster said slowly, something else was doing the recording. The room fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in. You're suggesting paranormal entities can operate recording equipment? Captain Rodriguez asked incredulously. I'm not suggesting anything definitive, but we need to consider all possibilities, no matter how unusual they seem. Detective Santos had been quietly studying the TV itself while the others discussed the footage. There's something else, she said, drawing everyone's attention. Look at the back of this television. Behind the TV, they found something that had been missed in the original investigation. A small, almost invisible wire leading from the TV's video input to a hole drilled in the wall behind the entertainment center. That wire wasn't there in 1999, Agent Morrison said with certainty. I personally examined this entertainment center during our investigation. Santos followed the wire, tracing it along the baseboard to a small access panel near the floor. Inside the panel was a compact video recording device that looked far more advanced than 1999 technology. This equipment is definitely modern, Jake said after examining the device. Digital recording capability, wireless transmission, self-contained power source. This is probably 2010s technology at the earliest. So someone has been monitoring this house for years, Santos concluded. Someone installed modern surveillance equipment and has been waiting for the right moment to reveal this footage. But why? Dr. Foster asked. What's the purpose of hiding evidence for 24 years and then displaying it on a TV in an empty house? Agent Morrison was examining the recording device more closely. There's no manufacturer's marking, no serial number, no FCC compliance labeling. This device was custom-built by someone with significant technical expertise. Can we trace where it came from? Santos asked. Unlikely, but we can analyze the footage it recorded to see if there are any digital signatures or metadata that might give us clues about who created it. As they prepared to remove the device for analysis, the TV suddenly changed. The static cleared and new footage began playing. This wasn't from 1999. The timestamp showed December 20th, 2023, just 5 days in the future. That's impossible, Jake said. You can't record footage of events that haven't happened yet. But the footage clearly showed Detective Santos and her team in the Thompson living room, examining the very recording device they had just discovered. The image quality was perfect, showing details of their conversation that they hadn't had yet. This is some kind of trick, Captain Rodriguez said, but his voice lacked conviction. The footage continued, showing Santos and her team leaving the house, then returning the next day with additional equipment and personnel. It showed them discovering something in the basement that made them all step back in horror. What did we find down there? Agent Morrison asked, but before anyone could speculate, the TV went dark. When they tried to turn it back on, it displayed only static. The recording device had gone silent as well, showing no signs of activity. We need to check the basement, Santos said, voicing what everyone was thinking. The basement of 1247 Elm Street had been thoroughly searched in 1999, but it had been empty except for typical basement items: water heater, electrical panel, storage shelves. The search teams had found nothing unusual. But when Santos opened the basement door that night in 2023, the smell that rose from below was immediately recognizable to any law enforcement officer who had worked homicide cases. The smell of decomposition. That wasn't here in 1999, Agent Morrison said. We would have detected that immediately. Santos descended the stairs slowly, flashlight in hand, followed by the rest of the team. The basement looked exactly as it had been described in the original reports, except for one crucial difference. In the far corner, where empty storage shelves had been photographed in 1999, there was now a section of newer concrete flooring. The concrete was slightly different in color and texture, suggesting it had been poured sometime after the original basement floor. "Someone buried something down here," Santos said, "and based on the smell, I think we know what it is." The discovery of the burial site in the basement changed everything. The Thompson family hadn't vanished into thin air. They had been murdered and buried in their own basement. But the timeline made no sense. The burial site was clearly recent, yet the family had been missing for 24 years. "How is this possible?" Agent Morrison asked as they called for a forensic team. "Did someone move the bodies here recently? Why would they do that?" Dr. Foster was taking notes frantically, trying to piece together a psychological profile of what they were dealing with. If someone has been monitoring this house for years, waiting to reveal evidence, they might be trying to tell a story. The footage, the burial site, it's like a presentation designed to reveal the truth in a specific sequence. "But who would do that?" Santos asked. "And why wait 24 years? The answer to that question was buried in the basement floor, waiting to be uncovered by forensic analysis. But as the team prepared to leave the house that night, one more unsettling detail emerged. Jake, who had been monitoring the recording device, noticed that it had activated again briefly before they left. When he checked the footage it had captured, it showed their conversation in the basement, but from an angle that should have been impossible given the device's location upstairs. "It's like something else is recording everything that happens in this house," Jake said. "Something that isn't bound by the normal limitations of camera placement or equipment." And as they sealed the house and established it as an active crime scene, Detective Santos couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by hidden cameras or surveillance equipment, but by something that had been present in the house for 24 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. The Thompson family's story was finally being told, but the truth was proving to be more complex and disturbing than anyone had imagined. The recording they had found was just the beginning, a prologue to revelations that would challenge everything they thought they knew about life, death, and the spaces in between. The dead, it seemed, had their own timeline for justice, and after 24 years of silence, they were finally ready to tell their story. The forensic excavation of the basement at 1247 Elm Street began at dawn on December 21st, 2023. Dr. Sarah Kim, the state's leading forensic anthropologist, supervised the careful removal of the concrete slab that had concealed the Thompson family for nearly 25 years. What they found beneath the concrete challenged every assumption about the case and revealed a truth more horrifying than Detective Santos had imagined possible. The bodies of Tom, Sarah, Jessica, and Michael Thompson were perfectly preserved, as if they had been buried yesterday rather than in 1999. But more disturbing was their positioning. They had been arranged in the exact same formation as their final moments in the living room, lying on their backs in a precise line, their faces turned upward toward the basement ceiling. "This level of preservation is impossible," Dr. Kim reported to the assembled investigators. "Even in ideal conditions, bodies buried for 24 years would show significant decomposition. These bodies appear to have been in the ground for weeks, not decades." Agent Morrison documented every detail of the excavation, comparing the scene to the mysterious footage they had discovered. The positioning is identical to how they stood in the living room before they disappeared. Someone arranged them this way deliberately, but the most shocking discovery came when Dr. Kim examined the bodies more closely. Each family member showed signs of having been restrained. rope marks on wrists and ankles, but no obvious cause of death. There are no apparent wounds, no signs of trauma, no evidence of poisoning or suffocation, Dr. Kim explained. It's as if they simply stopped living. Detective Santos was studying the crime scene when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Next to each body was a small electronic device, the same type of custom recording equipment they had found behind the television upstairs. 4 devices, 4 bodies, Santos observed. Someone has been recording everything that happened to this family, even after death. Jake Martinez, the digital forensic specialist, carefully extracted the devices and connected them to his analysis equipment. What he found on the recordings would haunt him for the rest of his career. Detective, you need to see this. These devices have been recording continuously since 1999, 24 years of footage, all from the perspective of the buried bodies. The recordings showed the Thompson family's final moments from their own point of view. The footage revealed that they had been conscious and aware during their burial, but completely paralyzed and unable to move or speak. For 24 years, they had been trapped in their own bodies, aware of their surroundings but helpless to escape. This is impossible, Dr. Foster said after reviewing the psychological implications. No drug, no medical condition could maintain consciousness while simulating death for decades. But the recordings continued, documenting years of the family's underground imprisonment. They showed the installation of the concrete floor above them, the various tenants who had lived in the house, and most disturbingly, regular visits from their killer. Someone has been coming down here, Santos realized. Look at the timestamps. Every few months, someone enters the basement and talks to them. The audio from these visits was clear enough to identify the speaker. Dr. Marcus Webb, a psychiatrist who had briefly treated Jessica Thompson for anxiety in the months before the family's disappearance. Dr. Webb had been interviewed during the original investigation and cleared of any involvement. He had provided a solid alibi for the night of December 15, 1999, and had shown no signs of suspicious behavior. But the recordings told a different story. "My dear Thompsons," Dr. Webb's voice could be heard saying during a visit in March 2000. "I hope you're beginning to understand the purpose of your situation. You're participating in the most important psychological experiment in human history." The recordings revealed that Dr. Webb had been drugging Jessica during their therapy sessions, using an experimental compound that he claimed could separate consciousness from physical death. Jessica had been his test subject, but the drug had affected her entire family when she shared a drink with them on the night of their movie. "The compound creates a state of suspended animation," Dr. Webb explained during another recorded visit. "Your bodies appear dead to medical examination, but your consciousness remains fully active. You're experiencing death while remaining alive, the ultimate psychological study." The visits continued for years, with Dr. Webb documenting the family's psychological state and refining his understanding of the drug's effects. He spoke to them as if they were willing participants in his research, completely ignoring the fact that he had essentially buried them alive. "Dr. Webb has been conducting unauthorized human experimentation for decades," Agent Morrison concluded after reviewing hours of recordings. "This isn't just murder, it's torture on an unprecedented scale." But the recordings also revealed something else. Over the years, the Thompson family had been learning to communicate despite their paralysis. The mysterious shadows captured in the security footage weren't supernatural entities. They were the family's consciousness projecting beyond their physical bodies. "They've been trying to tell their story for 24 years, Dr. Foster realized. The strange occurrences in the house, the unexplained phenomena, It was the family attempting to reveal the truth about their situation. The breakthrough in their ability to manifest physically had come recently, when Dr. Webb's experimental compound finally began to wear off after more than 2 decades. The family's return to consciousness had enabled them to operate the recording equipment and television upstairs, finally revealing the evidence of their murder. "They literally came back from the dead to solve their own case," Santos said, still struggling to process the implications. The investigation quickly turned to locating Dr. Marcus Webb, who was no longer practicing psychiatry in Cedar Falls. Records showed that he had moved to Colorado in 2005, where he continued his practice under a different license. But when Colorado authorities went to his last known address, they found that he had died of natural causes in 2021. "He's been dead for 2 years," Agent Morrison reported, but according to these recordings, someone was still visiting the Thompson family as recently as last month. The answer came when they analyzed the most recent recordings from the basement devices. The visitor wasn't Dr. Webb, it was his son, Dr. Michael Webb, who had inherited his father's research and had been continuing the experiments. "My father's work was groundbreaking," Michael Webb could be heard saying in a November 2023 recording. "You've provided invaluable data about the nature of consciousness and death. Your sacrifice has advanced human understanding immeasurably." A nationwide manhunt was launched for Dr. Michael Webb, who was found to be operating an unlicensed psychiatric practice in Oregon under a false name. When FBI agents arrested him at his clinic, they discovered evidence of at least 6 other families who had been subjected to similar experiments over the past 2 decades. Dr. Webb's arrest revealed a network of illegal human experimentation that spanned multiple states and involved dozens of victims. His father's research had attracted other unethical scientists who believed that studying consciousness during simulated death could unlock fundamental secrets about human existence. The Webb family has been conducting these experiments since the 1990s, Agent Morrison explained during a press conference. They targeted families who sought psychiatric help, using their medical access to drug and abduct victims for long-term study. The revelation that the Thompson family had been conscious during their 24-year burial sparked international debate about medical ethics, human experimentation, and the definition of death itself. The case became a landmark in forensic science and led to significant changes in how missing persons cases are investigated. But for Detective Santos and her team, the most important outcome was finally bringing justice to the Thompson family. The bodies were released for proper burial, and the house at 1247 Elm Street was demolished to prevent any further trauma to the community. "The family can finally rest," Santos said at the memorial service attended by hundreds of Cedar Falls residents. "After 24 years of unimaginable suffering, they found a way to tell their story and ensure their killer was brought to justice." The psychological evaluation of Dr. Michael Webb revealed a man who had been shaped by his father's twisted research from childhood. He showed no remorse for the suffering he had caused, maintaining that his work was advancing human knowledge about consciousness and death. "These families were volunteers in the most important research of our time," he said during his psychological evaluation. "Their temporary discomfort contributed to discoveries that will benefit humanity for generations." Dr. Webb was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while authorities continued investigating the network of researchers who had participated in similar experiments. The Thompson case became the cornerstone of prosecutions that eventually led to the conviction of 12 other individuals involved in illegal human experimentation. The scientific community was forced to confront the ethical implications of consciousness research and establish new protocols for human subjects in experimental studies. The Thompson case became required reading in medical ethics courses and led to stricter oversight of psychiatric research. For the families of the other victims discovered during the investigation, The Thompson case provided hope that justice could still be achieved, even decades after their loved ones had disappeared. Several other cases were reopened based on evidence found in Dr. Webb's files. Dr. Foster published a comprehensive study of the Thompson case that became a landmark in both psychology and forensic science. Her research into the family's ability to project consciousness beyond their physical bodies opened new fields of study in parapsychology and consciousness research. The Thompson family demonstrated that consciousness can exist independently of normal brain function, Dr. Foster wrote in her conclusion. Their ability to manipulate recording equipment and communicate despite physical paralysis suggests that human consciousness is far more complex than current medical science understands. The recordings from the basement devices were preserved as evidence, but also studied by researchers trying to understand how the family had maintained their sanity during decades of imprisonment. The psychological resilience they demonstrated became a subject of academic study and inspired new approaches to treating trauma victims. Jake Martinez, the digital forensics expert, continued analyzing the family's recordings and discovered that they had been attempting to communicate through electronic devices throughout their captivity. Previous tenants' reports of TVs turning on by themselves and strange electrical phenomena were all documented attempts by the family to reveal their situation. They never stopped fighting, Martinez said in his final report. For 24 years, they kept trying to tell someone what had happened to them. The technology finally caught up to their ability to communicate. The house at 1247 Elm Street was demolished in June 2024, but before its destruction, it was thoroughly studied by paranormal researchers who documented numerous instances of electronic phenomena that couldn't be explained by conventional science. The family's presence in the house had been real and measurable, providing scientific evidence for consciousness surviving beyond physical death. A memorial park was built on the site, with a monument dedicated to the Thompson family and all victims of illegal human experimentation. The inscription reads, "In memory of those who suffered in silence and found a way to speak the truth." The case also led to the establishment of the Thompson Foundation, which provides support for families of missing persons and funds research into ethical consciousness studies. The Foundation's work has helped solve dozens of cold cases and provided closure for families who had lost hope of ever learning what happened to their loved ones. Detective Santos was promoted to captain following her work on the case and became a national expert on cases involving unexplained disappearances. She established new protocols for investigating missing persons cases that included consideration of unusual or paranormal evidence. The Thompson case taught me that truth can be stranger than fiction, Santos reflected during a conference on unsolved mysteries. Sometimes the evidence we need is right in front of us, but it's being presented in ways we're not prepared to understand. The mysterious recording equipment found in the house was never fully explained. The devices showed no manufacturer markings and contained technology that was decades ahead of what was commercially available. Some researchers theorized that the family's consciousness had somehow manifested the equipment needed to tell their story, while others suggested that sympathetic forces had provided the technology to help them communicate. Whether the equipment was supernatural in origin or simply advanced technology that we don't understand, the important thing is that it served its purpose, Agent Morrison said in her final report. The Thompson family found a way to ensure that their killer was brought to justice. The case became one of the most studied in modern forensic history, combining elements of criminal investigation, psychological research, and paranormal phenomena in ways that challenged traditional understanding of each field. For the residents of Cedar Falls, the Thompson case marked the end of a 24-year period of uncertainty and fear. The knowledge that the family had been murdered by someone they trusted was difficult to accept, but it was better than the endless questions that had haunted the community for decades. "We can finally move forward," said Mayor Patricia Sullivan during the memorial service. "The Thompson family's story has been told, their killer has been brought to justice, and their suffering has finally ended." The case also had a profound impact on medical ethics and psychiatric practice. New regulations were implemented to prevent the kind of abuse that Dr. Webb had perpetrated, and oversight of experimental research was significantly strengthened. The Thompson family's 24-year journey from victims to witnesses to advocates for justice became a symbol of hope for other families dealing with unsolved disappearances. Their story demonstrated that truth has a way of emerging, even under the most impossible circumstances. On the 25th anniversary of their disappearance, December 15, 2024, a memorial service was held at Cedar Falls Community Church. Hundreds of people attended, including many who had been touched by the family's story and inspired by their persistence in seeking justice. "Tom, Sarah, Jessica, and Michael Thompson never gave up," said Pastor Robert Chen during the service. "For 24 years they fought to tell their story and ensure that other families wouldn't suffer the same fate. Their courage in the face of unimaginable adversity reminds us that the human spirit cannot be broken, even by death itself." The Thompson case ultimately changed how law enforcement, medical professionals, and researchers approach cases involving missing persons and unexplained phenomena. It demonstrated that keeping an open mind about evidence, no matter how unusual, can lead to breakthroughs that save lives and bring closure to families. The family's final recorded message, discovered on the basement devices and played at their memorial service, served as both a farewell and a call to action. "We want other families to know that they're not alone. Even when hope seems lost, even when years pass without answers, the truth is always there waiting to be discovered. Don't give up. Keep asking questions. Keep looking for answers." We found our way back to tell our story, and others can too. The recording they left behind wasn't just evidence of their murder. It was proof that love, determination, and the pursuit of justice can transcend even death itself. 24 years after vanishing during a family movie night, the Thompsons had finally come home. Not in the way anyone had hoped, but with the truth that would ensure their killer faced justice and other families would be protected from similar fates. Their story ended not with unanswered questions, but with the knowledge that some bonds between family members, between the living and the dead, between victims and justice, cannot be broken by time, death, or the cruelest intentions of those who would exploit the innocent. The TV at 1247 Elm Street would never play another mysterious recording, but the Thompson family's message would continue to resonate with everyone who heard their story. The truth will always find a way to be told.